This is CHSR 97.9 FM here in Fredericton, New Brunswick, Canada. This is Python's Paradise, your film and music show. And this is your host, Greg Gilbert, a.k.a. the Python Hyena. And folks, I was born in 1972, and a number of interesting movies came out that year. A number of controversial ones. You know, you had your Fritz the Cat, you had your Pink Flamingos, you had your Beyond the Green Door, Deep Throat. Well, you know what? You also had Last House on the Left. And, of course, you know, that movie was considered by many a video nasty. Well, I have one of the cast members of that movie on the phone with me today, and I feel very blessed to have him. We have the wonderfully talented Marc Sheffler. How do you do, Marc?
I'm fine, thank you. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, and I couldn't help but when we were conversing on Messenger the other evening, you said that you were the quote-unquote most immature 70-year-old person I've ever come across. Why?
Well, first of all, I've lived most of my entire adult life. In fact, actually, I think about all of my entire adult life, like a teenager with a fairly healthy allowance. I've grown. I mean, my body has gotten older, like the body is. But I look at myself in the mirror, and I know what goes on inside my head, and they are not the thoughts of a mature man.
Okay.
So when I turned 65, I looked at myself in the mirror, and I started to, get the things that I started to have the attributes of a senior citizen. I get on airplanes quicker. I can get a meal with $1 discount. All that nonsense that goes with being a senior citizen. And I realized that the body got older, but I'm still like 22, 23 years old. I never, I never got past that.
Well, you know what? I think that's a great way to live.
My wife is constantly saying to me, "Are you ever going to grow up?" And I said, "No, this is it." I like I said, I was about 65. I looked at myself in the mirror and I said, "This is it. It's not going to get any more mature than this. No magical maturity switch is going to go off in my head." That's why I look at my children, my 3 children who have all grown up, and become magnificent, productive adults in our society. Mm-hmm. And I wonder if they got that way because of me or in spite of me.
That is funny. Well, you know what?
Can I answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, Last House on the Left is celebrating, well, I guess it's not an anniversary this year, but I guess it's 47, like myself. And you, of course, played Junior in the film. When you went into that film, did you have any idea the controversy this was going to cause when you read the script?
Well, first of all, let me backtrack. The script that I read when I auditioned for the part was not the script that we ended up with, because there were tons of things in that script, the original script, that Wes and Sean put in just for the fuck of it, just because they're just wanted to shock people, that ended up never making it in the final. We kind of all had a little mini revolt once the cast was set, and we said, look, we'd like to do this, but we're not doing this crazy crap, this weird stuff, because it was basically a porn movie. It was that had a crime in it.
Yeah,
it wasn't, so that's what it started out as. So Wes, to his credit, sensed that we were, collectively as a cast, our instincts were right. So he rewrote it, and that ended up being the script. But even that thing, I'll tell you that when we had no idea, I'm shocked now that I'm on the phone with a guy in Canada for something I did like 47 years ago.
Do you still get recognized from the film?
I do.
Yeah.
I do. And mostly that's, every now and then here and around, but mostly it's concentrated at horror film conventions that I attend as a guest at times. So yeah, it's all a ride. It's just fun. You just be nice to everybody, and hope to live another day.
Okay. Well, I remember when I first saw this film, I was pretty shocked by it. I understand that where this film came from. I guess I read a quote from Wes Craven saying it was his answer to Vietnam, and I think Sean Cunningham mentioned that back in the 60s, there were a lot of Clint Eastwood westerns, and it was all bang, bang, you're dead, and you never felt anything. And you know what? You see a lot of that even in action movies today. You get a lot of these faceless people Austin Powers made fun of this in a deleted scene in that first movie where you get this steamroller thing coming towards this guard, and he's going, no, and is way, way far away from him, and in the deleted scene, it cuts to him with his family, and this and the stuff you don't think about to these people that are just, mindlessly shot dead or whatever in these movies.
Well, I do recall one of the things that Wes wanted to do was to bring the kind of soft core violence that you're talking about downstage, bring it downstage center, and so people could really see what it looked like. Also, Wes was very anti-war, was very anti-Vietnam, and other than that, that he didn't really set too many goals for himself. Because don't forget, it was the first time he had ever directed anything. Prior to that, he had just been editing, cutting some porn movies and some other stuff in New York. So this was his first film, and he kept it very simple. He didn't weave a lot of complexity into the story. And it was also, as you know, or you may or may not know, it was taken from an Ingmar Bergman film called The Virgin Spring.
I do know that, yep.
Okay. And that's based on that 11th century Swedish cautionary folktale. So he combined those very basic storytelling elements and shot it kind of pseudo-documentary style, which added to its believability. And that and the fact that the entire cast was unknown gave it an almost perverse newsreel sense to it.
Yeah. Well, of course, you played Junior, of course, and there's a group of 4 criminals in this, and of course you got David Hess, and you have Fred Lincoln, and you have Jeremy Rain. Jeremy Rain, okay.
Right.
And you're the one that could have been saved out of that bunch. You were the one that you're guilty, but yet the same token, you got a lot more of a conscience than the others. You bring the girls in, you get your drug fix, but yet you don't participate, and you got some regret there. Tell me your take on going up with this role and playing this.
You mean how I got the part?
Well, talk about how you got the part and
how I prepared for it.
And how you prepared for it. Talk about both, actually.
Okay. Well, keep in mind that I had never been in a film before, so I'd only heard how people prepared for it.
Okay.
So I never had it. I never had it firsthand.
Mm-hmm.
But what I did do, we were up around 85th Street in Central Park West, and a little west of that, and a little southwest of that, was a place in New York called Needle Park.
Okay.
It's like a little parky area between 2 avenues, and there was actually a movie with Al Pacino called Panic in Needle Park, and it was about a bunch of junkies. This, for some reason, was a place where a lot of junkies in the city would congregate. So I did spend some time there watching and observing, of course not actually doing anything, but watching and observing. And I picked up mannerisms, and I saw some commonality in behaviors, and so I as a young actor, I just tried to lay those on whatever I was doing. So, is that it? You answered the question?
Sure.
Okay, cool.
Well, you, of course, were not one of the characters in prison. You're the son of one of the villains, the leader of the pack. David Hess is Krug. And unfortunately, David and Fred... Yeah?
It's pronounced Krug.
Oh, Krug.
Not Krug. Krug, yes.
Oh, there's no E there.
No, there isn't.
Oh, well. Krug. Okay. Well, it's interesting because that became an inspiration for the name of Freddy Krueger, too.
Yes.
Too bad David Hess didn't get in that movie, huh?
Oh, well, things happen the way they do.
Oh, well. But what was it like working with Wes Craven and Shawnez Cunningham?
The entire experience, soup to nuts, was kind of extraordinary in the sense that I look back now and I kind of reflect on the body of knowledge that I possess at this moment about film and filmmaking,
Mm-hmm.
and I can say without equivocation that experience on Last House on the Left served as the foundation for everything I know. I know it was the basics. Everything I know now can be traced back to one or two things that I learned on that film by watching. So it was it's an extraordinary experience. I'm 20 years old. I'm an actor, I guess, because I did a couple of commercials, and I went out on a bunch of auditions. So in New York, that makes you an actor.
Okay.
So I get a film, and suddenly out of nowhere, it's a hit. It's a bizarre hit. So I have no complaints. I've had an extraordinary life, so I consider it a blessing.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because Sean and Wes, of course, combined ended up bringing us Friday the 13th and A Nightmare on Elm Street.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, of course.
Yep. But were you ever up for any of those films?
No, when they were doing those films, I had kind of backed off of acting and had been pursuing my writing career. So I was just much happier writing TV shows and learning to produce TV shows.
Okay. Well, talk about working with David Hess and Fred Lincoln and Jeremy.
Okay. David Hess working. Let's start with David and Freddie first.
Mm-hmm.
Working with David and Freddie, two entirely, completely different experiences, almost to the point that you'd think you were like on different planets.
Okay.
Hess was a bull in the china shop of life.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? And I say this with nothing but love and affection because David and I became very, very close, stayed close, lived together a couple of times, just we remained close, till he passed. And Freddie and I remained close. David lived up north and Freddie lived in Calabasas, so he was a little closer. So David was made the decision, the I guess Stanislavski method actor decision that he was going to be Krug 24/7 during the entire shoot.
Oh.
He was never going to break character. So while an interesting experiment, in practicality was extremely annoying, and to me personally, although I thought it was hysterical, but the girls, the actress who played Mary in particular, was really disturbed by him, to the point where she actually bolted the set one day and started hitchhiking back to New York City, and Freddie had to go get her, which is a perfect segue into who Freddie was.
Okay.
Freddie was a slick, smooth, New York, almost a Damon Runyon character, who had directed porn movies and had been in porn movies, and it was Freddie. Freddie is the unsung hero of Last House.
Okay.
Wes, it was Wes's first film. There was a lot about the mechanics of filmmaking and the tricks of filmmaking that Wes really didn't know at the time, but Freddie did. So there are a lot of the blocking and staging of scenes, especially the scene where Freddie has his teeth hammered by Dr. Collingwood rather, and the scene where Freddie gets his pecker bitten off by Mrs. Collingwood. Those scenes and a lot of the really tricky violence scenes and tricky effect scenes that we didn't have the money for or the experience for, Freddie would just, he knew how to do it. He knew exactly how to do it. So I consider Freddie, like I said, the unsung hero of this. Can you hang on 1 second? I have to shut off an Alexa because I have an alarm. Well, my wife did it. Okay, now I'm back. Thank you.
Okay.
Wait, now Alexa went off again. Alexa, yeah. Alexa, stop. You guys have, Alexa, stop. You guys have Alexas up in Canada?
Oh, I believe we do. I don't have it.
Hang on 1 second. She won't shut up. Jeez.
You
like
might
every other woman in my life.
You might have to pull a Last House on the Left on Alexa.
No.
Yep. So Fred Lincoln had to go get her. It's interesting because of how cruel his character was and what he was like. He was able to convince her to come back.
Well, Freddie was even David. Let me tell you about David. David was this character on the outside, but I knew him really, really well. And the flip side to David was and you see this through his music.
Mm-hmm.
David had an extraordinarily soft, sensitive, and complex side to him that was always struggling to get through that kind of a macho bully male exterior, and that was part of a lot of his conflict, his life conflict. That there was this wonderful, genuine, terrific, warm-hearted guy inside who was in conflict with this brash exterior.
Mm-hmm. Wow. What was it like when Sandra got back to set with him? Did things cool off?
She was never, I wouldn't be surprised if there are elements of her current existence that are still somewhat scarred by this experience.
Okay.
Most of us just kind of laughed at it. But then again, I wasn't the one having Hess on top of me, raping me, so I could stand back and detach myself. I didn't have to go through that. I think she was really, really troubled by that.
Oh. Yeah. Well, I really enjoyed the portrayals of Fred and David in this film, and of course, you mentioned him getting his dick bit off. That is the scene. I have to turn my head on that one. There's too much pain felt.
Yeah, I guess if you don't realize that it's like completely and utterly fake. Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
And we didn't talk about Jeremy. Jeremy.
Yeah.
Did you know that Jeremy ended up marrying Richard Dreyfuss?
Richard Dreyfuss. Yep.
Yeah. So Jeremy and I are the ones, since Freddie and David passed, Jeremy and I are the ones who go and do the conventions together. Mm-hmm. She's a wonderful, wonderful person. She spends most of her life now rescuing pit bulls, rescuing dogs.
Okay.
And she lives, I believe, up in Idaho, and has wonderful children, 2 wonderful sons and a daughter, I think, with Richard. She became a grandmother recently, years ago. She's just a terrific woman who I've also stayed friends with.
I have tried to reach out and get her on the show, and whatever contact I could find on her, I seem to have misplaced or something. But
all right, have you? I'll send her a text and tell her that you want to interview her, and I'll try to put the two of you together.
Yeah, I would love to have her on. She was so nuts in this film, but I love hearing this because this movie is so hated by conservative society. But I love hearing these stories about what you guys were like, because you guys were the villains. You guys were the ones that we just don't want to be around. I love hearing this side of your actual personality. So she rescues pit bulls. I think that's wonderful. I've had a lot of guests that are into animal rescue.
Oh, that's what she does. That she's devoted her, since her kids are now all out and on their own. I believe she's been devoting her life to, rescuing animals. She's just a sweet, terrific, lovely person. There's nobody associated with this film, considering what the creative content was. There's nobody associated with some remotely like anybody portrayed in this film. We were just actors.
Were you one of the animals that she rescued?
No, my wife is in charge of that.
But here's the story. I've heard stories about Wes Craven going to restaurants and whatnot, and people just don't want to be around him because of this film. And it's interesting,
I've never heard of anything like that.
Yeah,
I know that Wes. I saw Wes about a year before he passed.
Mm-hmm.
We were both guests at an art gallery opening. Some artists had done a multimedia rendering of items that were based on moments from Wes's films. So they invited Wes, and somebody who the gallery owner knew somebody who knew me, and knew I lived close by. So they asked me if I would go. So my wife and I went, and I walked in and stood around. Then Wes came in like a little bit after me, and we hadn't seen each other in quite a while, but there was, like a moment of immediate recognition. And we just kind of smiled at each other and had a, 20-minute private conversation about catching up on shit.
Mm-hmm.
And he was a nice man.
Yeah, I've heard that.
That the almost to the extreme point of the violence and horror and slashing that he's represented on film. If you go back to Zero and go then to the Plus, he was that kind of nice guy. He really was. Like I said, nobody, even Sean, who can be a little crusty at times, is at his essence a decent person.
Mm-hmm.
So nobody was like this. We were just playing.
Mm-hmm.
We're acting.
Well, you know what? Here's a story I have for you. I loved David Fincher's Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. I loved it.
Yeah, good movie. I like that.
Yeah, and I had somebody tell me that every copy of that movie should be burned because of the 2 rape scenes in it. Well, I caught him not too long afterwards coming out of the theater with his son from The Amazing Spider-Man, which I also liked, But I looked at him, I pointed to the theater, and I said, "So you're okay with the violence in this?" And here's the thing. Girl with the Dragon Tattoo makes you think about the violence you're watching. Amazing Spider-Man does not.
Well, here's the thing that I've learned about that, and I'm going to draw it right back to the longevity, the bizarre longevity that Last House on the Left seems to have.
Mm-hmm.
As the years go by, you look at things differently. Your perspective changes. So, when Last House first came out, I was having fun with it because girls from my high school graduating class who wouldn't give me the time of day couldn't wait to hop into bed with me. Okay, so all right, great career choice, right?
Mm-hmm.
So then I went through a phase where I disassociated myself from it, where I just moved away from it. Where I came to LA and did my writing career and wrote sitcoms and did stand up and just moved away from that thing. And then it was Hess who got me to start to go doing horror film conventions.
Those are fun.
I'd never done them. I had done them I had never done them, and Hess was in town from Northern California doing one, and we were having lunch, and he just said, "Come on with me." Hess was that kind of guy, right? He's a very inclusive kind of a character. So he took me to something, and people would come up to him and get his autograph, and he would then point to me like a surprise guest. I said, "Well, Junior's here too." And I went home that day. Well, first day was like, I don't know, $800-900 in cash.
Wow.
And I said, wait a second, this is pretty interesting. That's one aspect of it, but not the most important aspect of it. What happened was, this was the beginning of my kind of reacquaintance with the film, and my re-education to what it has become. And what I came into contact with was the fact that, number one, this is a film that transcends generations. That's why it's still being watched.
Yep.
Okay? It transcends generations. So you say to yourself, well, why does this piece of shit $90,000 drive-in movie made by a bunch of complete amateurs in 1971, what about it is making it, is powering it through the decades? Okay?
Mm-hmm.
So the answer to that question came from fans and people who would come to my table. And the answer is that parents have made their children watch this movie as a cautionary tale to what could happen if, when they're out on their own, they make some wrong decisions.
Yes.
And I can't tell you the number of 12, 13, 14, 15-year-old kids, boys and girls, who have come to my table saying, my parents made me watch this. My dad made me. My mom made me watch this. When I started going out on my own. Then I've had service people, American service people, come to me and say, this film was an emotional release for us, that we would come back from these horrible day outings like in Iraq and Afghanistan, where it was just, fucking horrible. Mm-hmm. They would come back and they would watch films like Last House because for some reason it allowed them to, vent whatever pressure was, and I don't personally understand the psychology of that, but I'm telling you what I would. So through the years, I heard different things from different groups of people, and I said, wow, now I understand it. I can't explain it beyond understanding it, or why it happened to this film, or to me, or David, or Sean, or Wes, or any of us. But I know that the film went on to have a much more profound and lasting impact than any of us ever expected.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, but and of course, I don't want to spoil this for anybody who hasn't seen the film, but your climactic scene and your last scene in the movie. Talk about the effect of doing that. Of course, when you got David Hess going, do it, and
blow your brains out.
Yeah.
Okay, so you want the effect on me or the effect on the people around me?
No, how they did the effect, like the physical effect. Yeah.
Okay, the way they did the physical effect was, if you go back and you watch the film, you can notice that it's shot in several different parts.
Mm-hmm.
So each one of those parts in film language terms is known as a setup. Okay, which means that the camera moves, the lighting changes, and the angle changes, and you're getting the continuity of the scene, but from a different perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep.
So what happened was they shot they sewed with my own hair. They created a device called a prosthetic, which was a latex brain exposed to the air with the damage of a bullet coming out of it. That was what it looked like, right?
Yeah.
And on the circumference of this prosthetic, for the sake of argument, let's just say it's round, right? Like a yarmulke,
Okay.
like a skull cap, right? So on the circumference of it, there were these little pinholes that the special effects person took my hair, my long hair, and stuck it through there, and basically sewed it onto the back of my head. But instead of using thread, used my hair. So now see how that is.
Oh, well, that is cool.
And then, yeah, and then it was dressed with blood,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So that when I was backing up towards the wall, you can't see the back of my head, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, but you see me with the gun, and you see my face, and then as I get closer, the camera angle changes to David. And that's when you hear the gunshot. You never see the gunshot. You hear the gunshot off camera.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then the next shot is me against the wall. So what I had done was I had taken the prosthetic in my head, and I sort of like hit my head on the wall off camera. And then my shot, my position one, my first position on that shot was standing and then sliding down the wall, so that the blood that you see sliding down that shows sliding down the wall was actually coming from the prosthetic wound in the back of my head.
Did you see the remake of Last House on the Left? I was not a fan of it.
You know, it's funny. I never saw it until I was contacted by a magazine, an online horror film magazine in England called Cine Excess.
Mm-hmm.
And if you search it online, you can find the article. They asked me to write an article comparing and contrasting the two films, and it in the form of a response to a woman who had done her PhD dissertation on Last House on the Left and horror movies and the new one versus the old one. I then saw it, and share your opinion. It was not good, and it surprised me because it was made by people who actually knew how to make a film.
Yeah.
But I think, and then I realized, from my producer's head, I knew what was wrong with it. It was just overproduced. The director on that was much more interested in creating like cool shots than he was in telling a very bare emotional story.
Mm-hmm.
I think that to Wes's credit, whether it was vision or circumstance, it was a great lesson in that when you tell a story that's so raw emotionally and so raw visually, that the worst thing you can do is distract the audience by overproducing it.
I liked the fate of your character because your character still turned for the better. He met a bad end, but because he was too overpowered emotionally and intimidated by Krug. But they had your character live in the remake, and I'm like,
I know.
And it's kind of, yeah. It's like, where does that go from there?
Well, look, I think, in a broader Hollywood perspective, I believe that the remake of Last House was much more an execution of a deal than it was the making of a film.
Yeah.
In other words, they shot it in South Africa. There's no reason to shoot that movie, to go to South Africa to shoot that movie, unless there are such financial incentives that you end up making money on the deal by just doing it. It's not something that was done for the purity of telling that story. Again, it was done, I think, as the execution of a deal.
Yeah. Because it's kind of like, even though your character had a change of heart, your character was still the one that lured the girls in. So it's like, if your character lives, it's kind of like, it's kind of awkward.
look. Here's the thing.
Mm-hmm.
If you go back to classic Greek or Shakespearean drama,
Mm-hmm.
characters like Junior, their fate is sealed the moment you meet them. And I'll give you a modern example. Were you a Game of Thrones fan by any chance?
I never watched it. I am certainly familiar with it. I don't watch television.
Okay, so there's a character on that show. There was a character whose name was Theon Greyjoy.
Okay.
And Theon Greyjoy was a tragic character because he was a male heir to one of those thrones, but he was basically emotionally neutered by a dominant sister, and he wove his way through that tale, doing good things and bad things, but always being a slave to his origin, and in the end ended up dying, but he died heroically, trying to save someone, but he still died.
Mm-hmm.
And characters like that who go through that kind of roller coaster of good and bad, their fates are sealed almost from the beginning.
Yeah. Well, I love the fact that I liked Junior in the movie where you portrayed him, because his fate was sealed, but he did make a decision for the good.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
We got to
So
talk.
tell me something.
Well,
So how many times have you seen it?
oh, gee, good question.
What scene to you is the most pivotal scene in the film? And I'll tell you what mine is. I always ask. I'll turn the tables on you. I'll ask you, what's the most pivotal scene in the film?
The most pivotal scene in the film for me is the moment the mom sees the necklace around your neck and she comes to realize what's really going on.
Okay, that's a moment in the most pivotal.
Okay.
The most pivotal scene is the dinner scene.
Okay.
And the reason is, if you notice, that's the scene where this movie transcends a very kind of primitive murder, crime, housebreaking crime, into class warfare. Because that's the scene where West did a lot of POV shots, where Krug began to judge the Collingwood's superiority against his own inferiority.
Oh, wow. I never thought of that.
Neither did I until that moment when I did.
We need to talk about the two girls. I gotta say, I loved Lucy Grantham's spunk in this movie. You know, I love the fact that her character Phyllis was constantly thinking. She didn't make it, of course, but boy, she gave it her all. Talk about working with her.
She was a hoot. She was a friend of Freddie's.
Mm-hmm.
Freddie knew her from the porn movies because apparently she had done a few of them. She was just, exactly, like she was just like a hippie girl, who was just fun. She was sweet and friendly and fun, and I don't know. My recollection of her, nothing but enjoyable.
Talk about the scene where she had to piss herself, where she got made to. That was so degrading, but
right.
Yeah.
She really didn't pee. You guys know that, right?
Well, they had a tube, some kind of tube, and
No.
no.
No. Here's how it was done. And I was there, so
Okay.
They took a big natural makeup sponge.
Okay.
And soaked it in water.
Okay.
And put it in her pants, in her crotch. And when she was told to pee, she squeezed her thighs together, and it made the water run down her leg and on her pants. That's how it was done.
Well, that's a new one for me. I never even heard of that. Talk about today they do that so differently, but wow.
Yeah, that's how it was done.
Yeah, I loved it when she came so close to making it to the road. She just got surrounded, and of course I always liked.
Actually, it was Wes's. It was the machete shot.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
It was the machete coming from under the frame, from bottom of the frame up into the frame.
Yeah. Yeah, you feel so bad for her, but she fought to the end. I heard she does a few of these conventions as well.
I've never done one with her,
but
I've heard the same thing. So maybe our paths will meet. I'd love to see her again. She was, like I said, a nice girl.
Love to get her on here at some point, and talk to her about this. But Sandra Peabody, I guess, okay, played the role of Mary. She's the one, of course, having the birthday party. This makes it even worse for her, I guess. Not the way you want to spend your birthday. And I love that scene where she's like after she got raped, and she just kind of gets up, and she slowly walks into the lake and just waits to get shot, put down.
Yeah, that's pretty creepy.
Yep. And I'm sorry. I'm sad she had such a bad experience on this film. Have you seen her since then?
No, I heard this, and I say I heard because it's completely unreliable, but that she teaches acting somewhere in Oregon.
Okay.
That's what I heard. I don't know if that's true, but that is what I've heard. Because I've heard a couple of people have tried to get her to do conventions or get her to do an interview, and she just won't go near it.
That's too bad.
It's her choice,
Yep.
Her experience was not what mine was, so she, it was unique to her. So I, it's her business.
Well, I know there was so many times in that movie where it's like they were so close to, like, when the car breaks down, how convenient that it's so close to their house. And when they're
pulled directly from Virgin Spring.
Yeah,
that's exactly what happened. That's the main pillars of the storytelling of the narrative were exactly what they were in Virgin Spring, because there was no reason to change that. It all made, from a forward-moving dramatic narrative perspective, it all made perfect sense. You don't want to fix something that isn't broken. You just want to adapt it.
Talk about Richard Towers and Cynthia Carr as the two parents.
Well, Dick Towers was my manager.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Dick was one of these charming bon vivant Broadway actor characters who also had a day job as a talent manager. So, he had his fingers in many pies, but he worked for a guy named Lloyd Greenfield, who had a company called Lloyd Greenfield and Associates that located in Rockefeller Center. Lloyd Greenfield managed Tom Jones and Engelbert Humperdinck simultaneously at the height of their careers, and he also managed me and some other actors. So Dick worked for him, and Dick was my contact guy. So one day I went into Dick's office, and Dick sent me on the audition, and I got it. And then, like a couple of weeks later, he came to me and said, "I have some interesting news to you, young man." and I said, "What?" He said, "Apparently, I'm going to be playing the father." And I said, "Great," and I didn't see him for a long. After we did it, I obviously stayed in touch, and then I moved to LA and didn't see him for a long time. And turns out his daughter was out here as a model, and he was coming out, and I ended up seeing him, on and off a couple of years before he passed. So he is just fucking character of characters, man. He was that New York actor guy who just, he worked every room he was in. So,
he's good with a chainsaw.
Yes. Well, actually, if you really, really notice, he's completely uncomfortable with that chainsaw.
I bet.
It was like, Dick holding and wielding that chainsaw was like, when I was a kid, you could spot a guy our age who wasn't born in our country by the way he threw a baseball, right? If you were a young guy and you didn't throw a baseball right, everybody suspected that you weren't really from here. And Dick was like a guy who was like so foreign with that chainsaw in his hand. But he was just, just a terrific guy. He was.
What was Cynthia Carr?
I didn't really know her that well. I don't have a solid recollection of anything plus or minus regarding her.
Mm-hmm.
So she didn't make she didn't make a negative impression on me. So we'll say she made a positive impression on me.
I just wonder if you heard anything about her preparations for the big...
Nothing.
And of course, there's a little bit of comic relief in this with the sheriff and his deputy, Marshall Anker and Martin Cove.
Okay, Marty and I stayed friends. And,
Yeah.
Marty has an amazing career. Marty, came out here. When I first moved out here, okay, let me go back. Did you see Woody Allen's Annie Hall?
Yes, I have.
Okay, so the scene in Annie Hall when Woody comes to L.A., and Tony Roberts picks him up in that car and wearing that funny little white suit and drives him around and shows him all around, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I had that in my real life, that very same moment when I moved to L.A., Marty picked me up and drove me around, and honestly, it was pretty much the same experience. And he had gotten here maybe a year before I did and was already established, and he is, I hate to keep sounding like I'm it's nothing but talking nice about people, but
Mm-hmm.
Cove is just another fucking sweetheart. I've been very lucky. The actors who were kind of jerky, I didn't meet later until I began writing and producing shows, but that's another interview. Anyway, Cove took me around, and I still keep in touch with him. Cove is the one who got Hess the audition for Krug.
Okay.
Because Cove was living with Hess's sister Judy.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and Cove got the role of the sheriff, the deputy, heard about Krug, made an appointment for Hess, and got Hess the job. I mean, Hess got himself the job, but it was Marty who got him the appointment.
I'm just looking through. Boy, his career spans so far back.
Marty?
Yeah.
Yeah, man. He's of everybody, as far as acting wise, Marty has had the most extraordinary career. And of course, he was in Karate Kid. He was the bad sensei in Karate Kid.
And he was in just recently Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Yep.
Wow. Yeah, they provided a little bit of comic relief in this movie as the bubbling sheriff and deputy.
Well, you had to vent the audience. You had to give them time to breathe.
Mm-hmm.
You can't make it all one thing. You got to give the audience a time to regroup, so that it's like a roller coaster. You always have the lift hill before you have the plunge.
Well, do you remember the controversy over it after it was released and yeah?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Did you
laughed at that?
Did you go to the premiere of the film?
I did.
What do you remember about that?
At the end of the film, the janitorial staff came by and began sweeping bottom jaws up off of the floor. People, they were just completely and utterly unprepared for what was on that screen. Just fucking, and in the most extreme example of that was when I went back to Pittsburgh, where I was born, and they had a huge premiere of the film. When it came time to the scene where I was about to blow my head off, my father, who was sitting next to me, got up and walked out. He couldn't watch it.
Oh.
He literally couldn't watch it. He just could not watch it. And I would say, afterwards, I said, but it's just fake. It's a film. He said, can't watch it. Can't watch it.
Yeah. Well, you and I have something in common, and that is James Balsamo. I was so delighted. Yeah, I'm so delighted. You're in I Spill Your Guts too. My cameo has got to be sent to him yet. I've never met James, but I've shot
another nice guy.
Yeah, I love James. Here's the thing. I come in contact with him through an actress named Genevieve Rossi. And she was in a lot of his films, and so I just kind of reached out to him. And one night, I was working night shifts at the time. I got this message from him, and he goes, "Would you shoot your own death scene for Cool as Hell 2?" And I just kind of stared at that message, because I'm not an actor, and I knew Linnea Quigley was in this, and other people, and I was like, why me? And I knew he'd be up. It was 4 a.m. where I was, and it was 12 where he was. So I just called him, and sure enough, he was up, and I said, why me? And he says, I enjoyed doing your show. And I was like, boy, I was honored. I was already in when he said that, but I said, what's the context to my death scene? Well, I'm now cameoed in 7 of his movies, and all I had to do is have it shot on my phone and emailed to him. In fact, his next one, his next one, It Wants Blood, I'm really excited about, because my 2 scenes that I shot for it are going to be viewed on a television by Eric Roberts, so I'm quite excited for that.
Oh, there you go. Good for you.
So here we got I Spill Your Guts 2, which there's 3 cameos I've still yet to send to him, and I'm going to get on my brother about that, but he's been busy with my folks. But nonetheless, I Spill Your Guts 2, I did my scene for that, and I was quite excited to find out that you're in this as well. How did you meet James?
I think I met him at a convention or something, or I don't know. And I saw somebody I knew had done a cameo in his film. So I put on Facebook, I said, and nobody ever calls me. So he shot right back to me and said, I got something coming up. If you'll do a small scene, I'd love to have you. And I said, yeah, sure. So one day he told me where to go. My wife and I showed up. I did a 2 little scenes, and that was it. It was fun, in and out. Had a sandwich and left.
Yeah, James is great, and I had a lot of fun sending these out to him, and I'm an associate producer on this as well. Again, through online. Never met the guy. Talk about what social media is doing with filmmaking nowadays. People shooting stuff on their phones.
Yep. Yep. It's the wave of the future.
I guess. But nonetheless, I was happy to do it. And was your wife in the film as well?
No.
She doesn't act. She just lets you act out.
She wants nothing to do with that. I have to beg her to come with me, so,
Do you have anything you can share about your character from this film?
I think I would describe the character as an Israeli crime boss.
Okay.
That's all I know.
Wow. Well, you mentioned
That's all I know.
You mentioned conventions, and this is something I ask all my guests. What's the most interesting thing you've ever been asked to sign?
Okay, let me think for a second. Well, I've signed a lot of boobs.
But that never gets tired.
No nipples. No nipples, but I've signed a lot of boobs. Let's see, the most interesting thing. I guess boobs.
Boobs. That never gets old, does it?
No, it doesn't actually. It really doesn't. I again, that's the immaturity thing. You'd think a man 70 years old would have gotten over that, but I don't. I don't. I still look down my wife's blouse, and I mean, I'm pathetic. I really am like nuts. I really will. It's like I know what's there. I woke up with it, but I still, if she's dressed, I want to look in her shirt. I can't help it. I'm sick. I'm sick, man.
So when you first did that first convention with David Hess, did he introduce you to the boob thing? Did he get it and then send it over to you?
No. I'm quite capable of discovering boobs on my own.
Well, you mentioned also you're a writer, and I've noticed some
You want to hear a great Hess story?
Yeah, please.
Okay, so right after Last House, Hess and I made a deal with Hallmark Releasing to write another film. So Hess, being the bon vivant character that he is, he convinces Hallmark that the only place we can really write this film is in the French Alps. Don't ask me how he did it, because I wasn't in the room. But he came back to the apartment one day and said, "Hey, we're going to Val d'Isère, France, and we're going to write this film." So we take a typewriter and skis, and we head to France. So we're in France, and Hess was an extraordinary skier. He was like a ski patrol skier, like fucking amazing. And he was big and strong, so he was, So we get to this little village in France, and he becomes friends with these Austrian, German skiing guys. These, like if in another decade, they're, Hitler's snow troops. So we make plans one day to meet at a certain cafe, outdoor bar cafe, alongside one of the main slopes. So the day goes by, and I show up, and there's Hess, and he's seated at a table with about 7 of these pseudo-Nazis, and one woman, like a hippie, a girl I came to find out was an American. So we're sitting at the table, and Hess is there clanging steins of beer, and they're drinking, and they're singing songs, and I'm feeling like really fucking uncomfortable and don't want to be there. And this girl says to David, who he had picked up, "David, I've been on the road all day. Is there a place I could take you, maybe go and get cleaned up, take a shower, do something?" And so Hess, at this point, makes the macho mistake. And what he does is he turns to me, and David used to like to call me the monkey, because I have hair on my chest, right? So he would call me the little monkey, his little monkey, the monkey this, the monkey that, the monkey. And the more he drank, the more of a monkey I became. So he dismissively, like says, yeah, the monkey will take you back. And I was great, because I didn't want to be there anyway. So I take the girl back to the apartment, the condo that we were staying in, and I say, "Hey, the bathroom's over here. There are the towels. Refrigerator has some food in it. You're welcome to have it. I'm going to watch some TV." So I go off to the television in the living room, turn the TV on, and I'm watching the TV, and I hear the shower run, and, running a few minutes, and suddenly I turn around, and the girl is standing there wet, wrapped in a towel. And I say to her, "Is there something I can do for you?" And she says, "Yes. I've been in a car all day, and my neck is like really stiff. I was wondering if you could maybe rub it out a little bit." So, even though I was 21 years old, I was no fool, right? I could see the next half hour of my life in an instant. So she sits down, and she's rubbing me. Starts to rub her neck, and the fucking towel comes off in a second, right? So it wasn't 10 seconds after the towel came off that we started up, and bing, bangity, boom, we are doing it. Like, in the middle of doing it, the door swings open. Hess, drunk as a skunk, walks in, screaming basically, "Hi, honey, I'm home." He sees us on the couch fucking and says, "Oh, my God, what is this? What's going on?" And without missing a beat, I look up at him and say, "Apparently, the monkey is having his banana peeled." And Hess, to his credit, just smiled and laughed and turned around and went right back outside and back to the bar.
Well, you know what? After
And said to me the next morning, "I guess I deserved that."
Well, he did dominate you in Last House on the Left, so he kind of owed you.
Yeah.
Oh, that is a great. That's a hilarious story.
True story.
Yeah, I got to talk about some of your written stuff. You wrote the love for the Love Boat. You did an episode of that.
I did.
Any stories about that?
Let's see. The only story is that I got that job because a guy I knew who also started out as a comedian by the name of Lee Aronson was working on the Love Boat, and we were friends. And then Lee and I ended up becoming partners and doing a bunch of stuff. And then Lee became partners with Chuck Lorre, and he and Chuck Lorre created a show called 2.5 Men.
Yep.
Okay, so there's that lineage right there.
Mm-hmm.
Everything is connected. You know, a lot of this stuff is really, it's that 6 degrees of separation. So it's all connected. So
And
that's my story for Love Boat.
You did an episode of Double Exposure.
Oh, well, Double Exposure was the title of an episode, I believe, from Coed Fever.
Oh yeah, Coed Fever. I'm looking. I read the episode Double Exposure. Coed Fever. Yes. Okay.
Yes. That was I think that was my first staff job on that show.
Okay.
And on that show, the writers were me, Jack Handy,
Mm-hmm.
who went on to Saturday Night Live fame, and then Howard Gewurtz and Ian Fraser, who went on to do Taxi.
Okay. You've got an episode of Sanford. You've done that.
Yes.
Yeah. And then one I'm very... Huh? Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say a show I'm very familiar with, Who's the Boss? I remember I used to watch that all the time.
Yeah, that's one of the shows I worked on with Aronson, and he and I wrote two of the two really pivotal scripts of the series. The first one was, if you were a fan of the show, you remember that James Coco played Samantha's grandfather, and that he died in real life.
Mm-hmm.
So Lee and I were given the episode that explains his death. And then we wrote the episode where Tony goes back to college, and that changes his life. So we wrote two episodes that altered the direction of the series. So I feel pretty cool about that.
That is cool. Do you remember Alyssa Milano?
She was just a kid.
Okay.
You know, she was just a kid. She was a terrific little girl, but just a kid. No.
She went on to have a lot of success in television. Went on to do Charmed.
Yeah, a lot of deserved success.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of these kids who are child actors, especially in sitcoms, because the work is so diligent and so disciplined, and so repetitive. You acquire, if you're lucky, and you have some talent and you're around talented older people to guide you, you can develop some pretty hefty chops. And Alyssa's one of those people.
Well, you did a lot of episodes of Charles in Charge.
Yes, I did.
Yeah, Scott.
Another show Aronson and I did together.
Yeah. Talk about working on that show.
That show was, let me see. That show was a by-the-numbers show every week,
Mm-hmm.
from the top down. The executive producer of that show was a guy named Al Burton, who came out of the Norman Lear Bud York and TAT camp originally.
Mm-hmm.
And Al was a guy who had a very specific vision of what he wanted that show to be. In fact, when Lee and I first went on it, we were given a very, very serious instruction by Hal Greer, the executive producer, the show-running executive producer, that we were not to pitch any episode ideas to Al that didn't begin with the word Charles. And that in itself told us everything we needed to know about what that show was. And it was, at the time, Scott was a reasonable, terrific professional. Again, he came out of the Laverne and Shirley, Happy Days, Gary Marshall camp, and Gary was a terrific guy. So Scott's father Mario was a good guy who, kept his kids in line,
Mm-hmm.
and taught them, proper values. When I was doing Charles, Scott was as professional and as creative and as giving as any actor I've ever worked with on a sitcom. He was, I don't know, I've seen things of him lately where he's kind of gone off the deep end. I'm sad for that because I remember him as just being a really good guy.
Mm-hmm.
Willie was always good to work with.
Mm-hmm.
The girls were good to work with. The kid Alexander Polanski was good. The grandfather was good. I mean, it was a great gig, man. I lived a mile and a half away from the studio.
Nicole Eggert.
Yes, Nicole Eggert.
Yeah.
I was waiting for you to get that. I have no personal visual knowledge of anything. I was never in that room. But I'm not disputing anything anyone is saying.
And of course, Harry and the Henderson TV series.
Yes, also a nice experience.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been fun. It's fun.
Yeah.
It's that working on a sitcom. All the things I've done, working on a sitcom, I think is the most fun because you know what you're going to do. You get enough chance. You get a chance to really work the characters. If you're on a show that's reasonably successful, you get a chance to have these people go through some fun. And the hours are great. It's like banker's hours.
Mm-hmm. Well, you
work in the office.
Yeah.
No, go ahead.
Yeah. Well, you did the Happy Days reunion special. What was that like?
Yes, I did. Well, I did that with my late partner, the amazing Sam Denoff.
Mm-hmm.
And we had known most of the people. Like, I don't think there was anybody in the Happy Days cast that we didn't know previously.
Mm-hmm.
So for us, especially for Sam, because Sam and Gary Marshall were peers and good friends, except for what's her name, the girl? She passed away.
Erin Moran.
Erin Moran.
Yeah.
Yeah. Except for Erin Moran, who wouldn't do the show. everybody was fine. I mean, you know, everybody was fine. Henry was great. Ronnie was great.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Anson, Donnie, and Pat Morita was just terrific. He was another sweet guy.
What was the issue with Aaron? Can you disclose that?
You know, it's not that I don't want to disclose it. I don't really know. I think it can be summarized by saying she was in a different headspace.
Okay.
You know, I mean, I don't ever think it was money because it was all favored nations. You know, everybody was paid the same. I just think she was in a self-destructive headspace.
Okay.
And you can't fight that. You know, you can't. You're trying to make a TV show. You can't be a therapist, or you feel sadly that someone is going through that. But there's nothing you can do. And when it became obvious that she was just going to be problematic and we weren't going to be able to make a deal, I think Malcolm Leo just said, "Fuck it."
Mm-hmm. Well, you got like People's Choice Awards and you got a couple People's Choice Awards. What was your role for these?
I had a main role and then another role. The main role was to write the show.
Okay.
So you write they're called takeoffs and landings. You know, what people say before they present and what they say after they present.
Mm-hmm.
And some bits and some other things. And like one year we had Steve Martin, so we had to write a bit for him. And then one year we had Dame Edna Everidge on. We had to write a bit for her, him, and then you know, little things like that. And then the other role was on the day of production. Sam and I were like the official schmoozers with the talent because we knew a lot of them. So you know, the way the backstage of those places are set up is that there are dressing rooms for people, and then there's a catered green room area with a bar and couches, and it's like unbelievably comfortable and delicious. So since Sam and I knew a lot of these talent, Don Mischer put us in charge of you know, talent wrangling in a sense. So we would sit and schmooze with them and get everybody in a comfortable, jovial mood.
Mm-hmm.
And then the show would go on.
You got a couple other films listed here. What was it like working with Lloyd Kaufman?
I never worked with Lloyd Kaufman.
Oh, you didn't? Okay, you got listed here. I Filmed Your Death. Notice he's in that.
I don't. That's not on my credits.
Oh wow, they got listed you as an actor credit named Mark O.
Nope.
Ooh,
not me.
Somebody screwed that up. What about 30 Days to Die?
Don't worry about it. Huh?
What about 30 Days to Die?
30 Days to Die? What do you want to know about that?
You play Sheriff Bobby Neely. Talk about...
I do.
Yeah. I've never heard of this film, but I'm going to allow you to plug it so people can check out your other stuff. Yeah.
A guy I knew, or a guy found me. I shouldn't say I knew him. A guy finds me on the internet, tells me he's making a movie, and would like me to play a part.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not doing I don't have anything to do. He shows me that the money is real. And I spend a week or two filming the role. That's it. And I ended up being a producer on it as well.
Oh, wow. So that was a great experience.
It was fun. Look, even when you make shitty movies, it's fun. You know? You're making a movie.
But your favorite part, though, is doing writing, right?
My favorite is actually doing stand-up.
Stand-up?
Yeah, I do stand-up.
Do you have any jokes you want to share with us?
Not on the telephone. It's kind of a, you know, it fucks up the experience. It's a much more multi-sensory experience than a voice on a phone.
When you do stand up, does it evolve around your experiences on film or just anything?
No, I perform. I perform as a character that I've created.
Okay.
I perform as a retired Orthodox Jewish caterer
Okay.
by the name of Elyid, and I wear a black suit and a white shirt, and I have a big beard and a hat, and I have morphed a character that I've created that's part my maternal grandfather and part the rabbi of the Orthodox synagogue that we belong to. And I've been doing that for 2 years, and I've done a little TV as the character, and have some other stuff coming up. But I go on stage and spout Talmudic humor.
Oh, that's awesome. I never knew this about you. I know you mentioned it in passing here in the interview, but a lot of people get on, they be themselves, but I love the fact that you're playing a character. And what made you decide to play a character as opposed to just go with yourself?
Okay. I actually have an answer for that.
Okay.
In 2015, I had a terrible car accident. Well, the other person had a car accident. I had a pedestrian accident. I was hit by a car walking home from a grocery store.
Okay.
And I was pretty busted up. I had fractures and, a lot of, nothing life-threatening, but a lot of broken stuff.
Okay.
And I was at the hospital, and in the first few days subsequent to that, I was in the hospital, and when they would give me medication, pain medication, my mind would drift off to the days back in 1976, 77, 78 through 81, 82, when I was performing at the Comedy Store with Robin Williams and David Letterman and Jay Leno and Tom Dreesen and Jimmy Walker and Michael Keaton and my life back then. And it was like a rocket fuel boost to the medication, the pain medication. It was this thing of, I remembered that life and that thing of doing stand-up, and it made me feel good. So as I started to recover, I kind of jonesed for the urge to get back up on stage. So I started going to the Comedy Store and watching and hanging out. And I started writing, and I don't know, I kind of reached a conclusion that no one was going to give a shit. And I wasn't famous enough that anyone was going to want to see me. And the fact that everybody was millennial and younger, and I was just an old guy with a beard. And so I kind of put it off. I said, it's another thing. I've had a great life. What the fuck, okay. So one day I was getting out of the shower, and it was dripping wet. I'm a thin person. I'm a skinny guy. And I'm standing there looking at myself in the mirror. My beard's very, very long. It's like dripping wet. And I looked at myself in the mirror, and I kept staring. And suddenly, I noticed a little sparkle in my eyes because I was thinking of something. And I pointed at my image in the mirror, and I said, "Wait a second, don't go away." So I ran into my bedroom and went into my closet, and I put on a black suit that I had, a white shirt, a black tie. I have a collection of hats, so I ran in and grabbed a black fedora. And I went back and I looked at myself in the mirror, and I said, "Now they'll listen to you. Now people will listen." And in like a flash, I gave myself a name, Elyid, which in Spanish is the Jew.
Okay.
My wife is Colombian and has, I've heard her say that in the past. Expletive deleted. And so I wrote for 6 months I wrote a character wrote for 6 months before I ever set foot on the stage, and I wanted to make sure that it wasn't a whim, that it had, legs, that it would stand on its own feet and be something. And then 6 months later, I got in touch with a pal of mine, a young millennial comedian who ran an open mic. And I said, I want to do 10, 15 minutes. He said, sure, absolutely. So I went up on stage as this character, and it worked.
Oh, wow. Congratulations.
Thanks. And in, 2 years, I've now got like almost 3 hours of material. And I go up on stage a couple of times a week when I'm in LA. And I've done some TV, and I suddenly have a manager. And so I'm just going to take the ride for as long as it. I did a show in New York at a real nightclub. Hang on, let me see who this is.
Yeah.
I'm not going to take it. I did a show at a real nightclub with, people, and it worked. So, I don't know. I just keep doing it.
You know what? I'm glad to hear this side of you. It's nice because, I know you from Last House on the Left, and that you go beyond I Spill Your Guts too, which I'm excited about because I'm involved in that. But I really love the idea of you doing stand-up and playing this character. And I hope at some point I can see some footage of you. Is there any stuff online of you doing this?
Yes.
Okay, I got to look at.
Go to YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
And search EL.
Okay.
New word YID.
YID. Okay.
Yeah. And then hit enter, and what should come up is an appearance I did on the Comedy Store tonight, and I believe I'm in at marker 2834.
Okay, because I got to see this.
Well, have at it.
How much fun did you throw any of that in when you did James Balsamo's movie? Because he does a lot of comedy. Yeah.
A little bit. No comedy, but elements of the character.
Okay.
It was a serious scene, so I had to, play the moment.
That's surprising. I can't see James Balsamo being serious.
The moment was a serious moment. So.
Okay.
Play the moment.
Oh wow. Well, you know what? I hope this continues to propel you and continues to keep you creative. You obviously are very happy, and
I am, actually.
And your wife keeps you in line.
I am. Yep.
Well, I'm so honored to had you on here, and reach out to Jeremy for me. I will gladly have her on. And she can even talk about her pit bull rescue on here, too. Do you have any charities that you're involved in that you want to plug on here?
No.
No?
I don't. We do stuff, but I sort of keep things on the down low.
Okay. Do you have a web page you want to plug on here?
There's El Yid's page on Facebook. That's it.
Okay.
That's it.
Again, spell his name for me one more time.
But I'm not sure. Pardon me?
Spell his name one more time for me.
Okay. It's small E.
Okay.
L.
Okay.
Small L. And then new word, capital YID.
YID. Okay. Perfect.
Yes.
All right. Well, you know what? It was an honor having you come on here and talk to me today, and I'm thrilled that we're both involved in a film together. That makes this even more magical for me. And, yeah.
6 degrees of separation. That's why it works.
Yeah. Before I let you go, would you mind very much doing a plug for my show?
No, not at all.
Okay. Just to state your name. You might well write this down, but state your name. Yeah.
Okay, my name.
And say you're listening to Greg Gilbert.
Okay, hang on a second. I picked up a vape pen instead of an
Now that was comedy.
Well, I knew that, actually. Hello, this is Marc Sheffler Jr. from Last House on the Left, and you're listening to Greg Gilbert at Python's Paradise from New Brunswick, Canada.
It was an honor having you on, Mark. I apologize that Skype didn't work out. I got to get the people in here to look at this and see what can be done with that. But I'm thankful that we were able to get together here and talk, and I'll get this out to you as soon as it's done. And I wish you best on your stand-up. It sounds to me like a great path for you to go down.
Well, best to you, too.
Yep. God bless you, and you have yourself a wonderful day.
You too. Bye-bye.
Yep, bye.